Uh,
All right, it is another beautiful day in paradise. Actually, the temperature in Austin is 86 degrees. It's a little warm, actually. I don't know why I'm wearing a vest. It was colder this morning. But it is February 22nd. It's amazing how January is already a memory in my mind, and we're almost closing February. I got great news, but I'll share some of those later. We have a great guest today, but before we get rolling, let's have John Sibley Butler get us going with some music.
there is a house in New Orleans they call Rising Sun, and it's been the door of many a poor boy. God, you know that I'm one.
Woo! Thank you, Johnny.
Hey, bravo.
Well, you
How
know,
is John Butler doing in this glorious day?
John Butler's doing well. We just finished Mardi Gras at home. All of my great friends are calling me, and this great home. Mardi Gras is finished now, and the day is Lent. So you just put a cross on your head and keep going and try to be good for the next number of days. I'm doing well. I've got my alma mater coming over here to play baseball, playing the Longhorns on Tuesday night. And looking at everything, I have been doing a lot of analysis for different things, whether it's cities, whether it's where we are in time and space, and looking at the president's totally humanitarian commitment to Ukraine was absolutely awesome. That was a total commitment to freedom and democracy, something that you just don't see today. And I thought it was very, very interesting, given the dynamics of what people were talking about on the radio. They were comparing, of course, in a different kind of way, which shouldn't have been done, the border in the great state of Texas with what was happening in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
Absolutely.
involved with taking Ukrainian refugees who might have been great over there and teaching them how to drive buses for our capital metro.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it interesting that, again, in the midst of this perfect storm, we also have a 1942 war, and the president of the United States going there to risk his life to support them. And then, of course, we have the economy that's up and down. That's also related, I think, to the war. When I say related, the economy is the economy of goods and services, and of course, how we think about it in our head. No economists have figured that out. And then the economy of money and credit. But in an interesting kind of way, our expectations would drive the economy, how we think about the world, and how we invest and how we create jobs. So the mental aspect, when you combine the mental aspect of thinking about the economy and thinking about the future, and then, of course, thinking about how everything would pan out, we have a war to pay for now. We have a war to pay for now. And then seeing some cooperation between the two parties in Congress and in the Senate for humanitarian reasons. Other than that, the great state of Texas is going right along. We're doing great things. We're getting companies here. Andreas, the amount of startups is just what I'm seeing is just off the shelf. The idea that technology can change everything from the future, of course. If we want to take care of our war, we just have our robots flying over there and talking to each other and looking for people with face recognition and et cetera. So again, the last 4 years have been interesting times to be alive, and that's including my service in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Never seen so much uncertainty, but that's why we're here. That's why we have a brain, to try to solve and go forward. And I think as long as we do that, we'll be fine.
Yeah, I was going to say real quick that, the market is suffering today from the fact that inflation is up 4/10 of a point higher than expected. And the market is adjusting and tanking, and the expectation is that the Feds are going to raise rates dramatically again because inflation is just out of control. And it's not a good thing, but may you live in interesting times. So Llewellyn King, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well, but we suddenly have gone from warm to cold here, but nature is very confused. Some trees are coming out, some are not. I look out the window, we have a mill pond in front of our apartment, and on the mill pond today, there were otters playing. They seem to think that spring has arrived. They're going to have a nasty comeuppance tonight when it freezes, but that's the way the weather is now. And if there is a large factor unpredictable in our affairs going forward, it is going to be the weather. It is not going to be, I wouldn't worry too much about the stock market. It suffers from mass hysteria. And you've got to discount that. The smallest thing sets it up or sets it down. But we have very large changes taking place. We have global realignments that are significant. We have, new players where we didn't have players. For example, the rise of Iran as a major player in guerrilla warfare. It's been going on a long time with Hezbollah in Lebanon, etc., but it's reaching out further and further and providing very sophisticated weapons, particularly drones. Has become one of the huge producers of drones. And part of that great realignment we're seeing is military the world over has to rethink its strategies, because drones are changing the nature of warfare very profoundly. They're cheap, they're plentiful, they're easily operated, they're easily deployed, and they're very hard to stop. We're seeing that in Ukraine. The only known way to stop drones is with some version of the Iron Dome, the system which we and the Israelis built over critical areas of Israel. It is expensive. Israel controls it with a veto power in the US because it's largely US technology, but there's going to be a scramble to put in Iron Dome type protections, which are very expensive, sophisticated, and not 100%. When we used to sit around private pilots and say, it'd be easy to take a Cessna and turn it into a weapon and put some automated controller in it. Well, the Iranians were doing that. And ever since the war between Iran and Iraq, before the Iranian Revolution, they were into building drones. They've captured and re-engineered ours, and now they offer a suite of very sophisticated and terrifying weapons that are going to change the balance in many places. The second country outside of the major powers building drones very fast is Turkey, and that's going to have an effect. It had an effect in the Armenian War. The world is changing. Not only is China now a major world power, almost invincible, Russia has resumed the same philosophies, actions, and governance, more or less, that it had under the Soviets. We're not in the place we were in. We are strong commercially, and we're strong in terms of invention. But the power centers are no longer the power centers of old. And we may not be the power center we have been heretofore.
Interesting thoughts. Let me go to our guest. Omeed, how are you, sir?
I'm good, Andres. How are you?
Well, thanks for being here with us. Those of you listening and watching that don't know much about Omeed, he's actually a Tiger, John Butler. He's an LSU grad, and happens to fall in love with energy. He is currently the CEO and co-founder of Yotta Energy, and he's going to be with us for a few moments all afternoon. And we're looking forward to learning more about Yotta and other things that he's working on. Prior to Yotta Energy, Omeed was the renewable energy manager at Build Native. He was also a business development manager at Evoque Electric Motorcycles and a product specialist at Tesla. and he was an educator at TEDA International School. And as I said earlier, he holds a Bachelor of Arts in Global Studies with a minor in film from LSU, and has a technician certificate on solar energy from Baton Rouge Community College. I've actually seen him perform training on installing solar. So he preaches, he exercises what he preaches every day. So Omeed, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Andres. I was just listening to the philosophy that these two were giving, and it reminded me of my time in school and learning about global studies and all these intricacies. So
Right.
I try to
Right.
focus on creating energy in the world. And a lot of wars are fought over the access to energy. And I think we live in a very special time right now where we can basically plop down, a device that produces energy, clean renewable energy anywhere on the planet that the sun shines. So
Yeah, I shall remind the audience and everyone that the amount of solar energy that eventually, after traveling from the sun to us over several million years and dissipating all that energy, that we get hit every day with 170,000 terawatt hours of solar energy every day. That's 173,000 terawatt hours. That is more energy that we will ever need in our lifetime as a planet in one day that we get, if we could only harness it 100%. So tell us, Omeed, what's going on at Yotta Energy and what's the vision?
yeah, the vision is to take over the world and just get 5% of Elon's market share. I'm just joking. Yeah, so I've been doing solar now for 15 years. I took a break from solar, had a interesting career path. I taught 6th and 7th grade for a year and a half, and it was a really great experience. Probably some of the best CEO training you can get is to be in a classroom. Then I joined a small startup called Tesla. It was very early days of Tesla, coming off of the Roadster into the Model S, the first purpose-built car. I helped a lot of early customers decide to take the leap of faith and trust a new company and a new product. And then I came back and settled in Austin, Texas, getting back into the solar deployment. And the real answer is that I just knew solar too well, and I got a little bored with it. And I knew that the next frontier was energy storage. And, the storing of the electrons and making it dispatchable was basically the next evolution. And, we set out to start this company called Yotta, which is 10 to the 24th degree. And so figuring out ways of how we make energy storage more simple, more easy to deploy. So the cornerstone of the company is a battery product we developed. It's called the Solar Leaf. And it's still the first battery that's designed to go directly behind solar panels in any element, right? Our system can work in Phoenix, Arizona, the hottest day on record. It can also work in the blizzard in the Northeast because we've built really advanced thermal properties into each battery that we deploy. And then from there, it wasn't enough for us to just do the battery. We realized that this market segment that we chose called commercial industrial, which is basically anything that's not a home and anything that's not the utility scale is our addressable market. We had to own the whole ecosystem. And so we've now launched our own inverter. So we have a 3-phase microinverter that ties to our system that we can tap into the grid, whether it's 208, 3-phase or 480. And I just left the job site today where we came back and installed these batteries, and we installed 5 EV chargers, because the future of this is basically a comprehensive product offering with solar, battery, and EV charging as one comprehensive solution, right? Mm-hmm. That's what we do. We're also developing some innovative products with the EV charging, e-mobility space to do, what is the biggest pain point for DC charging. You're pulling, every DC charger, it basically pulls as much power as an entire Walmart. So you think about it in that scale, how do you reduce that cost? And the biggest cost is that inrush of current that you have to supply somewhere else in the grid. And so we think the future of these systems, is solar and battery and EV charging collectively tied together. It's a very exciting time with the IRA bill that was passed by the administration. It brings a lot of stability to our market. And man, 15 years ago, I had a vision when I was installing solar panels of like, wow, I would love to have an electric vehicle and power it from the sun. And that's such a clear reality today. Just about anyone can put solar panels on their home and buy an electric vehicle. It's very affordable now. So I think it's an exciting time. And I think it's an exciting time to be pushing the boundaries on technology.
Absolutely. Tell us
Oh.
real quick, give us an idea of a couple of customers that you're dealing with, or a couple of projects that are interesting that you can share.
Yeah, I'll give a good example. We have a developer. So we develop the technologies and manufacture, and we sell them to the developers and the EPCs, which then turn around and sell it to the end customers. We're doing a project in Dallas with Half Price Books, which is a really well-known a local book company. So they're going to be installing a 250 kW solar array that has the ability to come back and add our batteries. The job that we just finished here in Louisiana is the largest roofing contractor in the state. He has about a 40,000 square foot building. So we have about a 200 kW of solar on the rooftop and 5 EV chargers. And he's anxiously awaiting, electric trucks, because he has 80 trucks in his fleet. And his second biggest expense after payroll is the fuel. And so it's very exciting that businesses are now looking at the ROI. It's not just the green thing anymore. It's the return on investment. It just makes more sense. Right? And we're really getting close to that point.
Yes, I'm glad that you've taken the unstructured problem of Tesla, the original Tesla, the scientist.
Right.
Who that there's enough energy with the movement of the earth to make everything move. Well, I just want to ask you this. So basically you are in the battery business a slightly different way. That is, what you're doing is you're taking the solar panels and you're attaching batteries to them, and therefore generating the movement and the storage, if you will, right from the element itself.
Right.
So my question to you is, there are so many people that's trying to solve, if you will, the Tesla problem. Well, my question is, when you look at your customers, how do you differ? How do you differ from other people who are doing close to the same thing? Because at the end of the day, it is a Baghdad battery that's moving around. I like to say the Baghdad burner, 3000 BC, they found the Baghdad battery. So how does your business model differ for battery storage in general? As you know better than me, when we look at the market cap and the creation of batteries, there are so many people working on the battery. How do you differ? How do you distinguish yourself if you were speaking to me as an investor or speaking to me as a customer?
Sure. Great question. Yeah, and kudos to Nikola Tesla for all his inventions. I think he went a little crazy at the end trying to do wireless electricity, right? Which he felt he was very close to. I like to think of a solar panel on our battery as a form of wireless electricity, with the sun beaming this energy to it, right? In the simplest ways. So what we do different, Dr. Butler, is I actually designed a lot of battery systems prior to starting Yotta. And where do you put the batteries on a building was sometimes the most painstaking part of the process, right? Because no two buildings are alike. So you have to figure out from the building owner or the tenants, hey, is this spot okay for the batteries? And then the spot that they're finally willing to give up for the batteries might be 300 yards away from the interconnect to the building. So now you've got a trench, right? And all of these variables of complexity add to the cost of these projects and makes them very cost prohibitive. What we have done differently is it's the first weatherproof battery that's designed to last 20 years and literally mount directly behind solar panels. So if you're putting solar panels on a flat rooftop, boom, the batteries go up there, and they actually serve as the ballast weight. So right now, installers are putting concrete blocks to hold down these systems so they don't penetrate the rooftops, and our battery actually replaces these concrete blocks. So it's a 2-for-1, right? But it's always about integration. And what I tell folks is the simplest solution that brings the highest value is what's going to win. And then that's what we do. We've really simplified energy storage. You can come back and plug in our batteries so easily. You don't need advanced electrician and to cut off the system, because we deal with low voltage on our systems, right? And we utilize the same inverter. So right now, a lot of these inverters, solar inverters, only invert the DC from solar panels to the grid. We utilize the same inverter for two functionalities, both from the solar panel and the battery. So we're actually cutting that cost down. What we're really doing is we're making it one project, right? Whereas every other solution out there, it's solar. They like to say solar plus storage, but it's more like solar and storage, and the storage just never happens. And with Yotta, the storage can happen very easily and incremental amounts of batteries, right?
But let me follow that up real fast, Omeed. So given that you have developed great technology, and we have talked a lot on this program about getting it back on the grid. We know that the grid is the biggest machine in the world. It has done great things. We also know that it continues to do great things. That it's kind of where computers were, 50 years ago. In terms of, do you have any trouble getting on the grid? So if I were to say to you, one of the causes of the great fires in California was the fact that the grid could not accept all of the power that was being put back on the grid. How do you see your movement in technology with what Llewellyn King would say, that the energy companies move in glacier type movements rather than entrepreneur type movements? Do you have any way of saying it would be problematic getting it back? Have you run into that anyway?
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of the batteries, right? With standard solar, you're not controlling the sun, it's intermittent, right?
Mhm.
So, and what you're talking about in California, those fires happen because of foliage and wind, right? But there's so many times that solar energy and wind energy is being dumped. We call it curtailment, right?
Mhm.
And it's just being dumped. So we're spending all this money to produce this energy. And because we don't have any form of storage, we're dumping it. We're literally, losing the investment. So that's where the value of our batteries come in. So we literally make solar dispatchable, right?
So you're telling me that instead of California dumping it, it'll just go to your systems?
It'll go to our battery. So we can move we can basically dispatch the solar right at the peak of the duct curve, right? Like that's what we do, right? With, California just passed NEM 3.0 interconnect regulations, which means basically, yes, you can export your solar, but you're only going to get the lowest wholesale rate, right?
Mhm.
It has basically overnight created a huge market for us because now the batteries will be utilized to do what's called solar self-supply. So they're going to store the energy in the batteries and then charge it to the building as it's needed, right? Well, it's literally, this is the evolution of solar. It's what's needed to make solar actually a dispatchable form of energy and no longer just intermittent.
And it also solved the issue of dumping, if you could just store it up.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
I don't know if I can share a diagram with you guys, but I've got something right here. I guess
Okay.
it's allowing me to. So if you can see the screen here, this is basically a profile of our system, right?
Mhm.
So the solar panels sit on the rooftop, the solar leaf sits on the same racking, and you have the inverter. This inverter outputs three-phase grid power. It's either 208 or 480 based on what you need, and we connect to the grid. So we synchronize to the grid. If the grid needs the power and the utility needs that energy, we can dispatch it. If the building needs it, we dispatch to the building, right?
Mhm.
So we are literally, and this is like an overview look of our system, if you're looking from right? We are literally turning solar power and making it controlled, right?
Mhm.
And this becomes even more important when you start installing, EV chargers everywhere, because now you're adding, and if you take a building in California and you look at their utility bill, 50% of their bill is not their consumption of kilowatt hours, it's their demand charges, right?
Mhm.
So what happens to that same building when they add 20 EV chargers for their fleet and they're all charging at the same time? Their bill is going to rise. They can have all the solar on the rooftop, but they can't control the biggest cost factor in their bill.
Mhm.
And that's where these batteries come in. So our batteries will be dispatched basically to the EV chargers demand. So that keeps the KW that's coming into that building at a stable input.
Very interesting and very different, I might add.
Very different. We're the only ones crazy enough to try to put batteries on a rooftop.
Well, you went to the right school, because we lose our rooftops there every year with the storms.
Well, it's opportunity, right? I grew up in
It's all
Louisiana,
about
right?
opportunity, you're right. Mhm.
Yeah. But most systems, like we've actually had a system in New Orleans actually going to later today that we're installing batteries in tomorrow. And the last big hurricane, I forgot the name of it, that category 5, the system didn't move at all, right?
Mhm.
We design every system to basically for the local wind coast. I think that one was designed for 150 mile per hour wind load speed. So,
Okay.
yeah. It's always nice to have a picture. A picture, sometimes serves as 1,000 words, they say. So.
I guess it's my turn. Omeed, I have a lot of questions, but the first one is, what is the technology in the battery? Is this a lithium-ion battery, or is this some other
Yeah.
form of battery? We have a large number of batteries sort of on the edge of deployment, but not deployed yet.
Yeah, great question. So we don't produce the batteries. We integrate the batteries. Our IP is the thermal management of the batteries. So we've developed a very unique thermal management system that utilizes ceramics, phase change materials, and thermal siphons. And it works as a comprehensive system to basically buffer the battery against a daytime high, and then and store this thermal energy that's built up in a phase change material, and then we dispense it overnight and reset. So instead of doing liquid cooling or HVAC, we've created a whole new category of doing thermal management of batteries. Now, the batteries we use are LFP, lithium iron phosphate, which was actually pioneered at UT with Professor Goodenough. So one of the names that I had for the company, Yotta, was Good Enough. I kind of wanted, I thought it would be a clever name to name the company.
Remember, he won the Nobel Prize. It's just
He
not
did.
good enough. And he won it at 92 years old.
I know, he's an amazing guy. So if it's not Yotta, one day in my life, I will name a company after him, and it'll be called Good Enough. And our customers will know that we don't just do great work, we do just good enough.
Looking at this as a layman, somebody who isn't terribly conversant with the technologies associated with solar, the question arises in my mind, this seems self-obvious. It seems like a very intelligent thing to do. Why hasn't somebody else done it? And why don't you have fierce competition in the market?
That's a great question. Sometimes the most obvious things. It's not easy, right? Developing the core technology and then miniaturizing it and then manufacturing it, it's one thing to prove it in a lab that it works. It's another thing to try to build it on an assembly line and build 10,000 a year. There's a lot of intricacies. So the other answer to that is people haven't felt the pain point the way I did. I literally installed battery systems very early on in my career and realized that the biggest pain point was figuring out where you put the batteries, right? But we do. I mean, we get this question a lot. We have two industry incumbent companies that we compete against. One is Solar Edge and one is Enphase. They're both now $40 billion companies. But this is what happens when companies get ahead and they start making great money, they get a little complacent. And that's where startups exist, right?
What is your plan for the future? What is your business plan? Is it to franchise the system, or is it to own it and manufacture it and deploy it yourselves? And how are you going to finance it going forward? The amount of money you raised in your offering, I think it's $27 million, won't carry any large undertaking very far forward.
Yeah. So the first part of that question, so we're already in market. We just got picked up by two of the largest distributors in our sector. And so we are an OEM. We produce the technology. We have installer partners, developers all over the country that are buying the technology, right? There is an element to this that we do have in our plans on the software side, where we will be making reoccurring revenue on the software when it starts to face the grid and bring value to utilities, right? And the latter part of your question is yes. I mean, everything in company building goes in stages. So right now we're in between that stage of a Series A, and we're going to be launching our Series B in about a month or two. And hopefully that's the last round that we have to raise before we get to profitability and potentially try to go public. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think you should try to go public, by the way. I think that you should let a big utility company come and buy you. But I never have a question. I have another question.
Sure.
As you talk to your customers about this, oh, by the way, Llewellyn, there's a great book entitled "Why Didn't I Think of That?" It's like the airline lady who invented wheels for the luggage as we were struggling them around. But I mean, let me just ask you this question as you approach the market, because you have something that meets the everyday needs of industry, the everyday needs of homes, and the everyday needs. Is there a great run toward your company? Do you have problems in growing? Are you growing too fast? Do you plan on raising other types of money as you move forward? And what's your strategy for growth on your strategy for the company. And by the way, I do not like the idea of you going public. I like for you to stay private. And we'll talk about that later. But can you tell me what your strategy is for moving forward in growth, and how you plan to finance the growth, and where you are now in terms of growth, and where are you making your components, and your supply chain? What's the impact of what we're doing now on your supply chain, please, sir?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions baked in one, but look, I take, company building is an art, and I try to look at it step by step, right? Obviously, if the right acquirer came by and they were able to capitalize the company and carry it forward, that would be a route we would go.
Mhm.
I just think that we have what it takes to continue growing this company and building it out and competing with some of the other great companies in this space. So, startups evolve around the 3 T's: technology, timing, and team, right? And everything is a nuanced, piece of the puzzle that goes together. My greatest thing, I can focus my time on the product, which I do. I focus my time on investment, which is up and coming. We're about to kick off a round, which is going to consume a lot of my time. But what I really love to focus my time is on people. I try to go out of my way to find great people. And sometimes the best people I have didn't have the industry experience, but they had a lot of grit and heart, and, they come in, they learn the industry, and they're some of the most, change makers within the company. But I think it's all in stages. If any entrepreneur sat here and said, this is my plan and this is what I'm going to follow, they're kind of removing flexibility, and flexibility is tremendous, in a company like us. To your latter question, so we are going to be kicking off a Series B rounds pretty soon here. And we're going to be raising capital with interested investors. But there's a whole lot of, one of the things that held back the C&I market historically was the lack of financing for projects. And it is safe to say that is no longer a problem. There is so much capital right now that wants to own these assets and monetize it over a 20-year period. We are about to announce a partnership with a company that does a 20-year loan that includes our technology. And that just never existed in the commercial space. It started in the residential space, and that's why you saw this huge boom of residential solar. So people can decide and sign a line and get a 20-year loan on a system. And then the other big direction that we're going into, and I'll have to share a screen again here because this is a pretty exciting thing. We are also developing what we call the Yotta Canopy. And share the whole thing 1 second here. So the Yotta Canopy is taking our existing batteries, our inverters, and incorporating it into a solar carport canopy structure, right? So this is like a 3-for-1. You're getting shading, you're getting rainproofing, and you're getting energy creation. It's a 4-for-1. You get energy creation, and you're also reducing this big cost with DC charging because you can dispatch these batteries, right? And the reason I'm showing you this product is this is one that we may partner up with a big asset fund and do a joint venture where we might deploy it at some scale, right? But the rest of our products we sell to the EPCs and the developers and the installers, and they then specify it into projects.
Well, let me just comment on that. I don't want you ever to take a loan. I want you to take equity. There's no reason to take a loan, okay?
Right.
You'll be the great entrepreneur. My good friend did walk-ons, and in any kind of technology, the great entrepreneur, it doesn't have to have a patent to be a great technology or to be a great company, but you're going to do a great company. So my comment, I have comments and then I have a question. First of all, as a fellow tiger, I don't want you to take a loan. I want you to build it around equity. Okay. Second of all, as a fellow tiger, I'm sending you my phone number now.
I'm in Louisiana, by the way. I don't know if you can see the scenery behind me.
Oh yeah, I can see it. I can see it. Right. Don't put your foot in the ground too fast. You might hit all, as we say in Louisiana, right? But the big question that I have is that well, I'm on the foundation board at LSU, and I think that in terms of the research that's going on in this area, the battery stuff that's going on in this area, how are you interacting with all of the new stuff that's coming down? See, what's interesting about your company is this, and you mentioned it before. The technology is happening so fast very, very fast. And Andrea's having me on the CNBC disruptive technology thing. Do you have anybody at all looking at what's going on in the laboratory? So Good Enough, one of my, faculty colleagues, of course, when I was at Texas, I mean, yes, he did. He won a Nobel Prize. But let me tell you, the battery stuff is just beginning. I would suggest that you have two board of directors. You have a scientific board of directors, and you would have a business board of directors. Because companies like yours can really be creatively destroyed by new technology. So search the laboratories out. So have you thought about getting a technology? All professors, when I did my company, I did a company called Glowfish with Alan Blake. It was genetically altered fish. And look, you got to have the science, because what's coming out of the laboratories now, especially in your field, it is moving so fast. I looked at today and I saw a battery that could that could charge my cell phone in 5 seconds. So have you looked at everything that's coming out of the laboratories? Get with Good Enough and ask him, the graduate students, what are you guys working on? Just don't take the technology and run with it. So that's my question.
Oh, this is a great question, Dr. Butler. So I think what you're alluding to would be, for us, would be solid state batteries, right? And, if you had solid state batteries, they can handle high temperatures by themselves. So this product would exist, but sometimes, as I've learned, if you wait for the perfect technology to start building, you'll never start building, right? And I always give this example because I was an early employee at Tesla. The Roadster was their MVP. It was their minimal viable product, right? There was nothing breakthrough that was in the Roadster. It was a Lotus chassis. The motor came from AC propulsion. All they did was bring batteries together, do some liquid cooling, build a BMS, and put it all together, right? But through that, they showed that with this integration and a little bit of software, they were able to prove this product category, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then over stages, now you can argue that Tesla's building their own batteries. They even build their own seats and speakers, right? So you always have to look at stages. But yes, you're right. We are actively looking at solid state chemistries. Anytime anything is mature, we start testing it. But you also have to take what's already available. And LFP technology, lithium technology, it took 30 years to get to this point, right? It didn't happen overnight. And
That's
so
right.
There's a lot of promising technology, but you got to start building with what's here.
I agree with that. But
Phase in those things over time.
as a former LSU Tiger, I'm just saying this. Look at the interesting kinds of technologies that's happening. I'm not sure that the Tesla battery is all of that now. Okay.
Yeah.
And as you know, during the last hurricane in Louisiana, they were blowing up everywhere, right? As they said in driveways. So I'm just saying that, it is the Tesla battery is the very, very beginning, I think. And it would certainly be done in more kinds of ways. Just keep looking in the laboratory is what I'm saying.
We will for sure. For sure.
Omeed, real quick, after my journey at Austin Energy from 2003 to 2010 and all the things that we did there, including building the first smart grid in the world, I wrote this book in 2011 called The Advanced Smart Grid, edge powered delivering sustainability. And one of the terms that we coined at the time was positive energy buildings, and the vision that every building, a house, a hospital, any kind of strip mall, all that, they all should be their own power plants. When you think about where you are today, commercializing your solution, which money is not an object to get, what's getting in the way for all the commercial and industrial guys to switch how they do their energy and embrace what you're pitching? What's missing? What's in the way? What gets in the way? You're muted.
Sorry, just trying to take out the background noise. I think it's all happening right now, Andres. It's a perfect storm. Like, we had this question from investors that said, we love what you're doing. We love the technology. We love your team. We just don't see this market of commercial, right? And we're like, you have no idea. It's all coming, right? You have, just Austin Energy announced a 50% rate increase for their commercial customers, 50% rate increase, right?
Mm-hmm.
And guess what's going to happen when you start having more? We're at a 2% adoption right now of electric vehicles. What's going to happen when we get to 5, 10, 15, 20%, right? The fastest way to create more kilowatt hours is to deploy solar on all these rooftops. There is no faster way to create more energy, and it will become more and more valuable. And there are big companies like Prologis and CRBE that are created whole divisions now that are looking at their entire square footage of real estate and saying, how do we make more money by using all this space? That's where Yotta comes in, right? It is happening. It just takes a little bit of time, right? We've made a very safe system for this market segment. We've made it the easiest way to add these systems to buildings. Our entire systems can be ballasted unless it's in a hurricane zone. Sometimes you need attachments. It's modular, it's scalable. It's, we can dial down to every individual solar panel and battery. The O&M is taken care of. And that adoption is happening. It's happening very quickly, right?
Okay.
That's why we chose this market. We said
Yeah.
4% of buildings have solar. Anytime you fly into a city and you look at rooftops, you see that, right? Like they don't have solar yet.
Mhm.
So 96% of these buildings are our potential market. What we've been waiting for is higher electricity prices, new business models of financing, and electric vehicles.
Yeah.
All that is happening right now. And then add in the IRA, right? Where you've brought basically, you've taken this uncertainty and now you've added 10 years of stability so that companies can plan for this, right?
Yeah.
It is.
When I
it's all-
look at the one of the biggest drivers of what you're doing in terms of demand is the electric vehicle, right?
Yeah.
And so I jokingly always remind the audience that, if all the all the vehicles in Texas, 22 million, were to go electric with 100 kilowatt hour battery, the total demand capacity needed, if they were all going to charge at the same time, which they won't be needed either, but let's assume that they do, it would be 22 million times 100 kilowatt hours, which is 2,200 gigawatt hours of power. And where is that power going to come from? It's got to come from your rooftop house, right? It's got to come from the commercial rooftop. It's not going to come from the utility building it.
Sorry, it will come from some of it's going to come from utility scale solar, right? But we always got to look at the efficiency of energy. When you build utility scale solar, that same kilowatt hour, when it's transmitted all the way to that building, it's probably 50% of its actual startup kilowatt hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of all the losses. We need to move to a decentralized grid system, right? We need to have every building's going to have its own solar array. Every building is going to have its own battery. Every home is going to have its own solar and battery. We're going to have the grid of the future is decentralized, right? And we've literally created the only battery that is decentralized alongside the model of a solar panel, right? And so we think that as the cost of power goes higher, it's just going to happen naturally. Then, all of these flat rooftops that don't have solar today will see it's crazy not to put solar panels on there. Carports, parking lots.
Oh man, let's ask the mathematical problem. What's the switching costs involved? And by the way, I don't know if decentralized, we're going backwards. So as my father was a county agent in Southern Louisiana, and he was doing rural electrification where everything was decentralized. Everybody had a windmill. So how do we make that smart? But the first question I have is, what's the switching cost? Usually with technologies like yours, let's say if I have a house, or I have a building, and I say, okay, I think we could be more efficient. What's my switching cost? Is it best for me to stay where I am mathematically on the financial level? What's the switching cost for me to switch? And then what's the switching cost for me to do all of the buildings, especially at the municipal level? Because switching costs become one of the major variables in the movement of people from one technology to another. So if I were to say to you, I'm not going to do this because the switching costs are too high, what would you say?
Yeah, let's start with your first point. Being decentralized, Dr. Butler, doesn't mean being off grid, right? In the past, it was decentralized and being off grid. We're not talking about cutting off the grid. We're saying having the ability to have a two-way flow of power where some buildings may produce 110% of the power, the next building might produce 90%, right? So it's kind of like the internet system, right? It's decentralized in its nature, right? In a lot of states, the switching cost is actually cash flow positive from day one, right? Austin Energy doesn't allow third-party, PPAs, power purchase agreements. But in California, there are folks that are signing over to put solar And it's cheaper for them to do that, to put a system on their rooftop and buy the power from their own building than it is to buy it from the utility, right? The problem with energy storage today is there are 13 and maybe some would say 14 value streams around energy storage of how it can be monetized. The ability to monetize that has not yet been fulfilled, right? And as it's happening, so that battery that sits on that rooftop, it can serve 13 different functions, right? The highest value is actually to the utility to be able to call and say, can you make that dispatchable when I have these really high prices, right? And that's where it's going. You're seeing companies like Tesla kind of push this boundaries with the residential batteries now. They, you know, I don't know if you know, that Tesla filed to be a utility on the deregulated market.
Oh, yeah, we knew that, yeah.
Basically to do this, they want to incentivize all their customers who have bought the Powerwall to give them the ability to dispatch power, right?
Yeah, but on the other hand, I mean, you know, Andreas were looking forward to his F-150 electric where they canceled the truck. I don't know if it's because Andreas tried to buy it, but I think that truck has been canceled. So I think that as we move, and I would like for Llewellyn to really talk about this, you know, if we move through history and look at how people have adopted new technologies and whether or not, you know, it would be good in the future and how it related to what we did in the past. But I really like the model. I like the model that we don't throw away electricity. That is, we can essentially, we conserve it, right? We can save it. I think the switching costs would be your major, probably your major variable. You know, in tech, and as we say in Texas and California, they'll do anything. So God bless their heart for the People's Republic of California. But I'm just saying, I think that the switching costs would be a major variable as you approach. Would you say that's true or not true?
It is, but I'm telling you, it's not the delta that you think it is. It's really gotten close.
Okay.
With these rate increases now and the demand charges, even in Texas, there are a lot of places. What's been lacking, Dr. Butler, is the financing structures to amortize it over a 20-year period or the life.
So I have a generator, you know, I'm in Austin, right?
Right.
And I just got a generator because of what happened last year. And I said to my wife, we have lost electricity in Austin twice since we've been here over 3 minutes. And she says, I got to have a generator. Well, in Louisiana, everybody has a generator, right? So are the generators your competition that runs on natural gas?
No, I look at it this way. You know, we can do backup, but it depends on what increments of backup you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think we've done a couple of systems. Actually, the one I just came from, it's our solar is tied to a 100 kW generator, and it works. You know, if once it goes into backup mode, the generator kicks on and backs up the building, right? Mm-hmm. With solar and batteries, it's, you know, it's at a place right now that if you just need a little bit of backup, you know, like some circuits in your home or some circuits in your business, it makes sense. If you're trying to back up your entire home all at once, the generator is hard to compete with. So I think it's a good hybrid system to have, right?
But do you see Austin Energy buying your company and going virtual with it? Do you see the New Orleans power plant buying your system?
I'd rather compete with
buying
all
the whole
of them and all the
system and
market.
go nationally with it? Llewellyn, what do you think about? You've been quiet. What do you think about this change?
Well, first of all, I think it's very interesting. I wonder what your relationship, Omeed, is with the utilities. I would think they could be an asset, or they could be an impediment, depending on how it strikes them and how they take it philosophically as well as commercially.
Yeah.
And I wonder why you're wedded to putting the battery on where the panel is. Is there any net gain there? That would seem to me to expose the battery as well as the collectors to any aberrant weather. So my inclination would be to put the battery somewhere safe so you don't lose everything in a storm.
Yeah. You guys keep hitting me for these 3-for-1 questions. Mr. Llewellyn. So the last question is, a lot of buildings don't have the physical space to put the batteries. And what we are doing is we make it very simple, right? And the core innovation of Yotta is our technology that makes the battery capable of being in the outdoor elements. So we have an IP67 rated battery enclosure with our thermal technology because we've designed it for the outdoor elements. And to your first question, we have some of our investors are utilities, right? They're seeing this, and I think when utilities look at these technologies, they're on two sides. They're either saying yes, we're going to embrace it and do it ourselves, or they go on the side of saying we're going to fight against it, right? And what I see what we do is we are basically a utility service. We bring power without being bound by poles and wires, right? And there are a lot of European utilities right now operating and buying companies that are exactly doing this, right? But at the end of the day, there's a value of generating these kilowatt hours. And if you, let's say you have a customer in California, they can buy our system and we're selling them power. We're essentially a utility to them, right? We're just not their only utility.
I'm very much in favor of this. I think the future is what I call the Uberization of electricity, because the job of generating it has become almost too big for the electric utilities.
Right.
And it has to be done by small entities, contractors essentially, or buildings, and later domestic generators. We're not going to get from here to there with the amount of electricity, which was referred to by Andres earlier, that we're going to need. We simply can't do it.
Right.
There is no way we'll put in utility scale solar or anything else enough to meet 2050 expected demand. It's huge, and there is a yawning gulf between what we can generate on present expectations and what is going to be needed. So something has to give, or something has to move into that space. Hopefully it'll be you.
I don't think we're going to be the only ones, but obviously that's
I don't either, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, that's what we see as well. I like the terminology used, the Uberization of electricity.
But you're taking, first of all, you're taking the financial responsibility off the utility. You're putting the capital costs somewhere else. And you're incentivizing a lot of players rather than a few players. And it'll be based, could happen very quickly, the way some things were deployed very quickly.
Yeah.
So,
Air conditioning after the Second World War was deployed very quickly.
so I'm trying to figure it out, Omeed, and your partnerships, how to accelerate the flywheel that you're building. And I think you need a lot of help because again, it's distributed, it's decentralized, it requires a lot of players, a lot of moving parts. How much of a relationship or how much of a key thing could be to have a partnership with this, let's say, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers?
Yeah, I mean, look, one of the big things that's missing in this industry right now is skilled labor. We have a customer in California who's having to cut back, turn away business because they can't find enough electricians, right? I think that is certainly a big opportunity there. Again, like I think solar now is getting to a point where people are saying it's here, it's the mainstream industry. Let's not fight against it. Let's figure out how we adopt it, right? That is happening, right? Austin Energy, for example, they have incentives for commercial solar. They're trying to incentivize more solar on buildings because they know that it benefits them when ERCOT prices get so high. It helps them to have these solar assets being dispatched into the grid system, right?
A quick question: how is your supply chain?
Yeah, it's been rough, if I'm honest with you. So we are now, last year was a rough year. We sold out of everything that we could produce or have. This year we stocked up really well and we have a good supply of product. But that was one of the biggest things that we had to, for a startup going through commercialization and manufacturing, last year, the last 2 years has been extremely rough on getting components and batteries and so forth, right? One of the things that we are racing to do, just like every other company with this IRA bill, is we're looking at how we bring our manufacturing to the United States right now. So that's my biggest challenge, right? But that also takes more investment, more upfront investment to make that happen. But it looks like that's the best thing that this IRA bill has done, is make this spurt of manufacturing coming back to the United States. It's literally happening. We are in the front end talking to our suppliers and seeing how we can manufacture our products in Austin, Texas, right?
So I'm happy to announce real quick, as I look at the time, that my 46th book has made it. Hope you can see that. Very timely for this conversation. And I'm also want to remind the audience that we're building a 160-acre solar farm at Texas State. An RFP is going out for a developer partner in the next 30 days or so. And then CMG is designing 3 solar farms for a total of 2 gigawatts. We just signed a contract today for one of those projects, and it's the beginning of a long journey of building a lot of solar farms. So I'm very excited about what Yotta is doing. I'm very excited about Omeed as a human being, as an entrepreneur, as a next generation Elon Musk. I'm glad that he had the chance to work for Tesla for a little bit and drink that Kool-Aid, just like I worked at Microsoft a long time ago. I'm looking forward to seeing your success, Omeed. Tell us what keeps you up at night the next 180 days.
What keeps me up at night? It's all, this is no easy feat, right? And I look at some of the greats in the past that have built big companies, and you see the toll that it takes on them. But every day is a challenge. I love this challenge. If it wasn't something that I was passionate about, which is solar energy, it would be impossible. But I think it's all the above. It's the business, but I wouldn't change it anything. I have fun. I feel challenged. I meet great people along the way. I feel like it's a very purpose-driven life that I'm doing. So I want to invite you guys. I actually have a Ford Lightning. You guys are welcome to come visit the Yotta headquarters, and we'll take a ride around the Ford Lightning. And we do have an install happening in about 2 weeks there in Austin as well, that I invite you guys to come by and take a look at as well.
That's
So,
awesome.
You might get to drive a Ford Lightning sooner than you thought, Andres.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Gentlemen, parting thoughts.
Well, I'm excited, especially being a member of the LSU Foundation Advisory Committee. I look forward to a big check in the near future for your alma mater. And not a little check, a big check. And I think you're doing great things. And I'd like for you to give me a call about the financing of the company. And it's a very, very interesting business model. And I think the risk that you have will be the competition that you have. And that would be related to some large company doing the same thing. And I think the other risk that you have is, I still say that, at the individual level, switching costs is not great, but at the larger level,
Yeah.
I think it would be great. So good luck with that. And it was great talking to you today.
Thank you, Dr. Butler. And if you want that big check to the LSU alma mater, you got to push me to go public.
There we go. No, you don't have to go public.
Llewellyn?
I want that big check. Push me to go
Well,
public.
I think this is very exciting. I think that we're beginning to see the limits to solar farms simply because of land usage. It's getting quite critical in some states. This is one of them, but largely in New England, parts of the Midwest, there's a lot of resistance. I think the use of roofs is absolutely essential. It cries out. Solar is the way to go. I find it superior to wind in a lot of ways. And of course, the joker is the battery. And presumably we're going to see a surge in the quality of and the performance of batteries, and you will inherit the earth, Omeed. And remember us, we gave you a push in the beginning. Send money. Cheers.
Omeed,
Yeah.
you just remember those who help you along the way.
I will, and I don't think you guys. I mentioned this, but we started. We were part of the IC Squared Institute and ATI Austin Technology Institute with Mitch Jacobson. So I started the company in Austin, and now looking back, I don't think there's any other place that it would have worked out as well.
I agree. I was the director of IC Square for 16 years.
Yeah. So we actually we're officing in there with and they remember us really well. We built our first prototype system there in the parking lot at IC Squared.
Yes.
So
I remember that. Yeah.
Well, looking forward to keeping in touch, Omeed, and I think I'm gonna see you on Friday. And Dr. Butler, if you don't mind taking us away on this amazing day of 86 degrees, lots of solar energy being hit in the earth.
Fight all the way. A fighting tigers picnicking today. You got to know how you doing fine. They go to the ball and she hit the wall and smash right through the line. You gotta go for a touchdown, run up the score. Big Mike the Tiger, straight right up and roll, so give it all Fighters, you fight tonight in the Golden View. Victory for LSU.
Woo!
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you guys. This is fun. All right.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right.
Call me, Omeed. Okay, all righty.
I will.
bye-bye.